She walked into our home wearing a red satin robe, his hand on her back, his laugh in her ear, never suspecting who was waiting behind the curtain. Then she saw Jason's wife step out, calm and cold, holding every secret they thought was hidden. But what happened next will shock even those who thought they'd seen everything. But first, let's go back to the beginning. The air was thick that afternoon, not with heat, but with the kind of stillness that only settles over a man when something foundational quietly collapses. I stood at the edge of my own backyard, hidden by the sliding door's shadow, watching my wife of 32 years giggle like a schoolgirl as our married neighbor, Jason Carter, leaned in a little too close. His posture wasn't casual. It was intimate, practiced, familiar. And when his hand slid over her knee like it belonged there, something inside me didn't snap. It sank. I didn't move, not out of shock, but because my body refused to accept what my eyes already knew. Lori's laugh wasn't nervous. It wasn't a mistake. It was the kind of laugh I hadn't heard from her in years, and it wasn't for me. My hands curled into fists, not from fury, but to keep them from trembling. It was like watching a dream that had cradled me for decades melt in slow motion, drop by drop, into something sour and unrecognizable. I backed away on instinct, and the universe, in its infinite cruelty, gave me a rake underfoot. I caught my balance before it clattered to the ground, but my breath was another story. It stayed lodged in my chest for the rest of the day. I didn't tell Lori I'd come home. Didn't mention my forgotten phone. That evening, she came inside hours after me, humming to herself, cheeks flushed like she'd just finished a workout. She kissed me on the cheek like it was any other day, and I let her. Not because I was weak, but because I needed time. Time to understand who she really was. Time to remember who I used to be. As she slept beside me that night, peacefully, almost smugly, I lay still, eyes open, staring at the ceiling fan as if it could spin the betrayal out of the room. I thought of every dinner I'd grilled for Jason's family, every birthday gift Lori had handpicked for their kids, every Sunday brunch where we all smiled and nodded and acted like we were safe. But I wasn't angry. Not yet. What I felt was something colder, more calculating. Rage is loud, but humiliation? Humiliation whispers. And in that whisper, something older than love stirred inside me. Something ancient, silent, patient. Something I hadn't needed since my days walking into burning buildings. That part of me wasn't gone. It had just been waiting. The hardest part wasn't the betrayal itself. It was pretending not to see it. Each morning, I'd sit across from Lori at our kitchen table, the same one we bought after her promotion back in '03. She'd sip her coffee with that same half-smile she used to give me when we were younger. Before the mask slipped, before the lies took root and bloomed in plain sight. She thought she was playing a clever game, but I wasn't playing anymore. I was documenting. My training taught me how to assess a blaze, identify its source, isolate the fuel, predict the collapse. This was no different. Lori's phone, once left out on the counter like an afterthought, was now always locked, flipped face down, never more than arm's reach away. Her wardrobe changed too. New perfume, tighter jeans, even heels on Sundays. When I'd ask where she was off to, she'd toss out the same soft, practiced lie. "My sister's having a rough weekend, just keeping her company." I nodded, each time adding another notch to the growing ledger inside my head. Venmo was the first real crack. She forgot to turn off notifications one night while showering. I saw Jason's name and the note. For the bushes. Only we hadn't had anything trimmed or planted. That was enough to make me start digging. Within days, I had screenshots. Transfers labeled yard work, supplies. Even one that simply read, "Thanks. Landscaping, my ass." I built a file. Not just in my mind, an actual manila folder in the back of my desk drawer, printouts of texts I forwarded from her tablet, timestamps of garage door openings from the smart home app, even a receipt for a bottle of Merlot she claimed she hated, bought twice in a week, both times on days Jason worked from home. Meanwhile, Kelly, his wife, still waved to me from across the fence like nothing was wrong. It was almost worse than Lori's betrayal. Watching Kelly smile, trusting me, trusting him, not knowing she was standing ankle-deep in someone else's wreckage. But I said nothing. No outbursts, no accusations, just a quiet ritual of gathering truth. I cooked for Lori, complimented her hair, held open doors. Not because I loved her, those roots had rotted, but because I wanted her comfortable. I wanted her to feel untouchable. Because the higher you think you are, the longer it takes to realize you're falling. And I was going to make sure they both felt every inch of the drop. The morning I spoke to Kelly, the sky was overcast, like even the sun didn't want to witness what was about to unfold. She was dressed in her Sunday best, a soft blue blouse, modest pearl earrings, and a small white Bible in hand. The woman radiated grace. Grace that didn't deserve what had been happening behind her back. I asked her gently, "Do you have a moment?" She smiled, out of politeness, not suspicion, and followed me onto the porch. I didn't waste her time with preambles or apologies. I handed her the folder, neatly compiled, everything in order. Screenshots, bank transactions, dates, names, her name, Lori's name, Jason's fingerprints all over the margin of every lie. At first, she didn't understand what she was looking at. Her brows furrowed, skimming too fast to keep up. Then the lines in her face shifted, paleness, rage, shame, all colliding in rapid succession. Her hands trembled, but her voice didn't break when she finally spoke. "How long?" "Months," I said. "Maybe longer. I only started paying attention recently." She didn't cry, she didn't scream, she just nodded slowly and handed the folder back like it was something sacred. Then I gave her the second envelope, thinner, lighter, but heavier in implication. "The spare key's inside," I said. "Tuesday, 11:30. That's when they'll be here." Her eyes didn't leave mine. "What do you want me to do?" "Whatever you need to do, for you, not for me." She nodded again. Once. Sharp. Decisive. "I'll be there." On Tuesday, I left early. The house was clean. The curtains drawn halfway. Everything placed as usual. I made sure the back door was unlatched, not wide open, just enough for someone who knew where to push. I didn't linger. Didn't check my phone. Didn't circle the block like a nervous teenager. I drove to the lake and waited. Later, Kelly filled in the rest. They walked in like it was a honeymoon suite. Jason's arm was around Lori's waist, and she was wearing that red satin robe I hadn't seen in years. She used to say it felt too much for our home. Funny how quickly it found its use again. Kelly didn't shout. She didn't throw things. She waited in silence behind the living room curtain. Waited until they were deep enough in their delusion to think the world was theirs. Then she stepped out. The look on Jason's face, she told me, was the kind of fear no man can fake. Lori stumbled backward like a child caught sneaking liquor. Kelly didn't flinch. She laid every printed message and receipt onto the coffee table. "So this is what you do while I take care of your kids?" she asked, not raising her voice once. Then, turning to Lori, she said with surgical calm, "You think you've won a man? You've just inherited a boy." And with that, she walked out. No tears, no chaos. Only Jason's phone in her hand, and every illusion he built scattered behind her like ash. The night Lori came home, the air around her was already heavy with defeat. She didn't walk in like a wife returning from an affair. She walked in like someone stepping into judgment. Her heels barely touched the floor, her eyes hollow, mascara streaked like war paint after the battle had already been lost. The silence wasn't awkward. It was final. The kind that follows a funeral. I was in the garage, fitting the last of my tools into their cases. Not rushed, not panicked, just deliberate. Everything I needed to rebuild, somewhere else. She stood in the doorway, like she still had a place in my life. Like we hadn't crossed the one line you never uncross. Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. 1,000 excuses, maybe. A dozen regrets. I didn't care. I didn't need to hear what made her do it. I already knew. People don't cheat because they stop loving you. They cheat because they stop respecting you. I handed her a manila folder. Inside, signed divorce papers, notarized, filed, and final. On top, a single note in my handwriting. You broke something I can't fix. I'll leave the house to you. But the silence, that's mine. She didn't cry. She just nodded, barely. Maybe she thought I'd rage, scream, plead. But what she got instead was absence. The sharpest form of closure there is. I didn't slam the door. I didn't leave a dent in the wall. I left with nothing but my pickup, my tools, and my peace. The cabin I moved into sits at the edge of a pine thicket 2 towns east. There's a porch that creaks when the wind hits just right, and mornings that smell like sap and soil. No neighbors. No questions. No lies. Jason? Word is he moved in with his brother. After Kelly locked him out, changed the locks, and kept everything. House, car, kids, dignity. Lori still sends the occasional text. Birthdays, holidays. Once at 2:13 a.m. Why didn't you yell? Why didn't you fight for me? But some battles don't need noise, because men who know their worth don't claw for what betrayed them. They don't scream to be heard by someone who already turned away. They simply hand over the keys and walk into the quiet with their dignity intact.